Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. I'm Justin Lewis.
And I'm Tanner Wayland.
And we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show. Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM. I'm one of your hosts today, Justin Lewis, and I'm here with Rob and Tanner Wayland. And I'll let Rob introduce himself in a second, but let me first tell you, the listener, about today's episode. So if you're new here, we are here to help you craft better stories for yourself and your players as you DM sessions of Dungeons & Dragons. And today, we're actually going to dive into the world of homebrew creations. Specifically, we're going to show you kind of the start to finish, hopefully start to finish. We might split this episode up into 2 episodes, but the start to finish process of creating something, but also the start to finish process of collaborating with someone else in creating something, because being a DM can be somewhat lonely, and it's very taxing if it is lonely. So when you team up with other people like Rob, you can make it easier for everyone, but also it's just fun to connect and be cool with people. So, Rob, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we can hop into what we're doing today.
Hello there. Hi. My name is Rob Van Auken, and I write and publish a lot of stuff under DM Robrick. I'm just happy to be here with you guys. I've played with both of you in your one-shots, and I'm a frequent listener, and I'm looking forward to this. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And listener, if you want to catch one of Rob's published encounters, you can go to betterdungeonmaster.com/Robrick and purchase it. It's an awesome encounter called the Lorecraft Collection. Did I get that right? The Lorecraft.
That's correct.
Yes, yeah. So go ahead and publish that. All the proceeds go right to Rob because he's an awesome DM. But today, like I said, we're going to work on homebrewing, and we haven't prepared anything specifically to show you, the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the exciting and boring parts of homebrew creation. So I have shared a document with all three of us. First of all, did either of you have any specific ideas on anything you wanted to create together?
I'm game for just about anything, but cool. I thought I would put that question right back to you folks. I don't know the scale and scope of what you guys were thinking, but we can go anywhere from a fun random table to a one-page encounter to a several-page one-shot kind of adventure in a box kind of thing, if that's what you guys were looking for.
Sure. Tanner, any specific way you're leaning?
Ooh, man. I've been thinking about this as well, because I think, it'd be cool to do a one-shot, but that is, it takes a good amount of planning, So,
Nope.
I think we'd come up with...
No pressure. No pressure.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm thinking that maybe we just figure out, just how... like how long we want it to last, and then essentially just go
Sure.
work backwards from there. Come up with a cool premise.
So,
I don't know. That sound
yeah,
good?
absolutely. To date, my I don't want to call it my area of expertise because I'm still fledgling in the field here, but I have created encounters that are circled around the three pillars, right? Exploration, combat, and social. And my goal with each of these encounters is to kind of put a little randomized table that could possibly lead crafty DMs down other avenues to kind of expand the encounter itself, right? So it's kind of like an encounter in a box with these sort of like little tendrils that allow DMs and players to kind of pick up things and maybe decide, oh, you know what, that was kind of an interesting little tidbit. Maybe I'll follow that idea.
Excellent.
And let it grow, right? I don't want to keep any DMs in a cage here.
Yeah, I love that. Let's do an encounter then.
Yeah, maybe an encounter. What if we just had we created like a kind of a little mini one shot with just one of each of those three pillars, some exploration, some combat, and some social, and then go from there.
Love it.
And listener, we probably won't get all of this today because creating a one shot can be rather long. So we're probably going to split this episode up. Yeah, stay tuned. But first, let me just write down. I'll be the notes keeper, I guess, unless one of you is better at it, because I'm not super great at keeping notes.
I'm happy to help.
Okay.
Happy to help however I can.
All right. So, homebrew. Gosh, I wish I could spell. Homebrew creation. One shot.
While you're typing, I'll put this idea to you both here.
Yeah.
What is the flavor that you would like to capture? Are we going epic fantasy? Are we going swashbuckling pirates? Are we going sort of for frivolous? I had the opportunity. I believe Tanner, you were the dungeon master for. It's kind of like a Halloween, almost like a Halloween themed. When we played, we had entered that kind of sort of creepy haunted pumpkin patch, and there was a pumpkin-headed villain. So October is coming up, so something like that might be kind of cool, like a campy kind of holiday themed.
I like that.
We can go. I know Spelljammer just came out. We can go. D&D in outer space, Homebrew in outer space.
No, yeah. I like those ideas. I think we should definitely either do a Halloween themed one, Christmas themed one, because Christmas is also coming up, and or Thanksgiving, or a mix of the three. One other thought I did have is because I specifically want this one shot to be very useful for anyone to play, specifically the introductory DMs. So if we could create a one shot that and like Tanner said, it touches on the adventure, the exploration. Sorry, not adventure. So the exploration, the combat, and the social.
Combat.
And kind of introduces the DM to doing that. I think that would be extremely helpful to our listener. So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
Okay. As far as the actual theme, let's say, I mean, space does sound cool, but I'm gonna say maybe later. That might be a later one. I haven't even thought about space, and I would want to put more time into that. What do you guys think about an academy setting?
That. I think it's very reminiscent of Harry Potter, so that would be easy for a lot of people to relate to, in a sense.
Yeah, I also think that it provides a lot of opportunities for both social and exploration, because and then of course combat, whether you have it as part of a lesson that goes awry, or they're exploring in the middle of the night, or who knows what, right? I think it's a very approachable kind of setting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally on board. Now, I know that you have a homebrew kind of world build that you've been working on, Justin. Is there a location or a place where this academy might be set?
Yeah, so there is one academy that is currently created. I'm still working on the world itself, but it's called the Brazen Academy. I don't know if it would exactly fit this, so it is essentially an academy specifically created for teaching people how to smelt and mine this material called deep iron, which is it's harder than adamantine. In this world, every magical item that is like +3 is made of this stuff, and this academy belongs to this nation called the Kula Uea Confederacy, and they guard it very highly. So once you get in, you can't get out. Like, there's no escape. Like, they'd kill you before they'd let you out, because the secrets of smelting this type of iron is so closely guarded. I don't know if that would be a good location, but if you guys want, we could also create a different academy in the world that is a little bit less intense.
Well, I'm just thinking if, and this is just me shooting the breeze here, an academy, and you want this to be useful for beginner DMs. So what if the academy was for a school of, I guess it could be children, it could be anybody who's interested, but a school for would-be adventurers, and like each of the houses is led by your traditional class types, right? So you've got like the barbarian house, you've got like the clerk house, you've got the wizard house, and so the PCs could join a house of their desire, and the purpose of this particular encounter would be to maybe pass the test, whatever the test might be. This way it's replayable, right? So PCs and players could play it over and over again as a different class. It's something that's kind of easy to jump into. The purpose is kind of defined. I don't want to like railroad anybody or streamline, but the tests would be things that we could make randomized tables for, or we could certainly just insert something. And again, people could play this over and over again. This could be something really cool. A nice, almost like I teach for a living, so I'm always thinking of like how to bring kids and young people into the game.
That's exactly.
It sounds like it might be a good way to do that.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah,
I love that idea, especially because also it's kind of meta. It's like, here's the test, becoming an adventurer, and if this is played by new players, then it kind of actually is like, now you're an adventurer kind of thing. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So then I guess. Well, go ahead, please.
No, I was just gonna say. So the theme then would be like school test type idea, not necessarily Halloween or Christmas, but I guess you could flavor it that specific way depending on when you play it.
It is back to school, so it does kind of fit.
That makes sense.
The back to school, like summer's out, back to school.
Yeah. I think there's a couple ways we could do this. Either one allows a lot of randomization, or tables, depending on what the DM wants. We could do a test, kind of like you were saying. We could do a club fair, where it's like, each club kind of tries to throw you through the ringer to like see if you got the stuff.
Or like Rush Week, like in what's it called? Sororities and fraternities and crap.
Yeah, or even in a lot of like a lot of manga, a lot of anime, they have like these fair things, events like school fairs where each class has like their own. They like turn their classroom into their own kind of like thing. It's usually themed or whatever, like a haunted house or like food related or something, Either way, I think any of them kind of allow good randomization, Yeah,
that would be an interesting way to begin. The school fair arrives in the town, and the would-be heroes, I guess that, I don't want, again, I'm not trying to streamline anybody or railroad them, so they can create their own backstory as to why they would show up here. Maybe they're, the poor kid in town and they want to show up and make a better life for themselves to provide for their family, or maybe they're just simply, interested in the schools, and they, everybody's doing it and they want to join and get into a particular school.
For sure.
Yeah. And then they go to the school fair just thinking they'll have fun or whatever, and then they pass some tests, and then they get accepted, and that'd be a cool end.
They get their first assignment.
I think we're set on the school setting, so maybe it might be more beneficial for us to flesh out the setting like specifically, kind of make some get the lay of the land, and then we can create the plot around it. Like the school does this or doesn't do this, and it would make a little bit more sense for why people would go there or things like that.
Works for me.
Okay.
So we have the location as this sort of school setting, right?
Okay.
And we'll worry about things like synopsis and title for this stuff later.
Sure. Does anyone have a name for the academy?
Just working title: House of Heroes.
House of Heroes.
Home for the hero. House of Heroes. Something sort of.
What about
like that? Just.
What about Robrick's Academy for the Adventurely Gifted or something like that?
That works. How to?
I don't hate Robrick. That's for sure.
How to be better, adventurers.
Yeah. Robrick's. It keeps changing to rubric.
So my one
keeps switching.
My one rule, and I was going to kind of do this reveal later, but my one rule is after I've kind of plotted my beats and I've plotted out what I think I want to say. My one rule is make it weird. Right. So there's got to be something about it that is unique or different, right? Having a magic sword is really cool, but having a magic sword that is made from the bone of a dead giant that talks to you is even more interesting. A school is interesting. A school for heroes is very interesting, but a school for heroes that if you flunk out, there's a real ramification, or there's some kind of real motivation to not flunk out, right, or not cheat on the test. A school for heroes is cool, but a school for heroes that sends you on an adventure and where you might perish, now there's this impetus to kind of actually learn. And maybe as they learn these sort of micro skills, maybe there's a real buff to their ability scores or their dice rolls in some way, shape, or form. It could either be in the form of like a magic scroll that allows them, +2 on any particular strength roll, like a strength scroll, or it could be, so there's a reason to go through these 8 schools and learn something from each of the professors, or maybe we just have them allocated to one school and one professor in which they have to kind of just hone their, cleric skills or their rogue skills or something like that. So I guess the next step for me would be like, do we want PCs to adventure to various classes, or do we want them to kind of remain in one class?
I think it might be nice as far as, and I know I just said like let's focus on the setting rather than the plot, but it might be nice for us to be like, this is the group project year where every person from a class gets assigned to a group, and that's kind of how they're pushed together, and their assignment, then we can give them the assignment for the year or something like that. And kind of like, I don't know if for the year would be a good one, but maybe, maybe that's why they're together. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts?
I like that. Yeah, because they've been kind of like randomly allocated. And I like that too for one shots, because my problem with one shots is they don't have any particular glue for these people who might be sitting down to play for the one time. So if there's like an arbitrary reason to be together, it's because the teacher assigned you together, and that happens all the time in school, right? Draw lots, and now you guys are working on the project together. So yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'm sorry. You wanted to work on the setting, and I kind of went straight to plot.
No. That's totally my bad, because I was like, oh. No,
yeah.
Anyways, continue, Tanner.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Just making it like, hey, this is a project. Now, in terms of adding something weird, I kind of like the idea with this school. I have a couple ideas. One, I think that kind of what you were saying, Rob, if you do well on a test, they really they kind of beef you up, But if you fail a test, they won't hold back on punishing you. And I think that could just be something that you see throughout the adventure.
Maybe go ahead.
But maybe for the, I mean, who knows, right? What were you saying,
go first.
Justin?
I interrupted. I'm sorry.
Okay. My other idea is maybe the school's a little bit weird, and because they have this really strict blessing and also punishing kind of mentality, then they're also willing to kind of test you in more surprising situations. Like for the class project could be stealing something from one of the professors.
I like that.
You know, it could be your professor, or it could be like a professor's uh, kind of pitting their students against other students. You know, just where they're like, hey, if you mess up, it's your own fault. That professor will punish you. You know, that kind
So
of
what
thing.
I was going to add was, I think we could do something pretty interesting with, the alignments. So in Harry Potter, there's like the different houses. In Broadbrooks Academy, I think we could say that there's like the different classes that are for the classes, but then above that there's the evil and the good, and like the academy specifically went and recruited evil professors and good professors because they're like, hey, we need to teach these people how to be good, and the punishments are based on which kind of side you're on. And when you get assigned to a group, it's either mostly neutral or evil, or neutral or good, and both the evil and the good are trying to kind of sway the neutral towards their side. And it's kind of like this competition to see who gets more points, the good or the evil, you know. And if you're on the evil side and you get punished, like the professor takes a little bit of your soul. And if you're on the good side, you have to do like intense hours of community service forever or something like that. Like, like I don't know.
That is extreme. We're going to steal your soul.
Exactly.
Sure, sure. I'm all for doing things about thinking about that in order to make it weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one thing with D&D that's always interesting, is the whole good and evil, because I think people are moving away from that more and more. But I'm like, it is, and also like, do people consider themselves evil? You know, I don't know. I'm like, I like the idea though of like different philosophical kind of mindsets in the we could keep it simple, like you said, just do two groups essentially, if we don't want to go crazy with like 4 different houses or like 5 or however many, right?
So, yeah, let's give that some thought, right? So in terms of setting, is it going to be a fair, or do you want it to be the actual school? And there's no rule saying that it can't start with a fair and then gravitate. But once you start traveling, it kind of ceases to be an encounter and starts to become an adventure.
Yeah.
And not that we can't write like a mini adventure of 3, encounters. But I think, the first encounter should be like recruitment or admissions, right? Like that's the application process for school, right? So admissions would make sense to be like the first encounter.
And then fast forward a little bit and be like, hey, you're in this time and this is what your schooling has done, and now you're here,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tanner.
Or like what could happen is, in terms of school fair, I am picturing like almost like an admissions fair, almost like it's at the school, and people who want to come in, they kind of have to pass a general admission thing, and then if they do that, then they go into the school, and like each class has its own kind of like, I guess you could say, test or trial, and then after they go through each one, maybe at that point they're given like the end of the adventure could be that they're given an opportunity to choose which one. I don't know.
So you have I'm picturing a village or an urban setting, city of some kind, and the players enter the space, and as you described, Justin, there is this this fair, or this sort of like a admissions fair happening, where there's the bard kiosk, and there's the druid kiosk, and there's the sort of wizard kiosk, and each one of them has some previous graduate student doing some kind of magical thing or something for their school, and the player characters maybe visit each one of these, has a sort of interaction. There's the social part, they have some kind of interaction where these schools are trying to recruit them, And before they can receive a bid, they have to prove some kind of aptitude in that particular field, right? So there's a player who's interested in becoming a bard.
Yeah.
Not only interacts with the bard counter, but has to kind of prove some kind of musical aptitude. And then maybe the end of this particular encounter is they receive a bid. So a player might receive a bid from the bard school, the cleric school, and the sorcerer school, and they have to choose it. They have to accept the bid for that, the house that they want to enter.
I like it.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
So now,
I like that.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my only concern with that is time. Like how long will they have to go and do these? Or I guess they would be like simple rolls, so they wouldn't really take that much time. So actually, never mind. Yeah, we could just because you just do like a random table. Like here's your test. And then they have to do a specific roll and kind of describe it, and then they either pass or fail.
And again, just to make it weird, so let's say same scenario, right? They enter this town, they enter this village, there's all these kiosks. They're not sure which one they want to engage with. Maybe they engage with one or two, and they have these sort of designs to visit all of them. But at that critical moment, a hill giant comes crashing through the town. And you see that the Bard School is in shambles and the Wizard School is about to get toppled. Which way do you run? Let them kind of choose de facto by who they're going to save, right? And again, not that we have to enter a hill giant, but when this unexpected thing happens and there are consequences, players are then sort of tasked with making real decisions on the fly, right? So they might have had every design to go visit all 6 of them and learn more, but after only visiting 2 of them, they're interrupted and they have to make a decision based off of something that quickly. That's what I might do for a one shot. If I was doing a larger campaign or an adventure, by all means, take your time and visit all 6. But you create that space for the neophyte DM and young players to kind of just be limited to 2 choices, because 8 classes or 12 classes, whatever they're up to right now, might be overwhelming. But the first 2 that they visit, they're the most interested in, because that's the first 2 that they visited. Right.
I think that's a good idea.
Right. So
we might be able to even just, instead of like a hill giant, just say like, you get to the fair late, everyone is putting their tents down, you think you have like an opportunity to visit 1 or 2, which ones do you go to, or something like that,
Yeah. I really like that. And even something else that might be nice, just kind of add a little bit of weirdness to it. I think that social interaction could be an opportunity to kind of test them, not only how they speak, but also do some, some different checks, skill checks, where they're trying to impress one of these, like, 2 that they're talking to, right? And if that player is able to impress them, then I think that it would be cool if that class or group or whatever gives them essentially something to help them through the test.
Might be a really interesting way to do like a riff on the point buy, or the standard array, right? Like everybody, all their abilities start as 10, and if you impress them, you get that 15 in the skill that you like, and the one that you flunk on, you get the the minus, you get the 8. Might be an interesting way of doing that, as opposed to the traditional way.
I do like that.
That'd be part of the make it weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm starting to get a flavor for what we're headed towards here.
So, go ahead.
My next introduction, or my next question to you would be, every encounter, every adventure has an obstacle of some kind, and then sometimes it's what a perceived obstacle versus the actual obstacle. If choosing the house is not going to be an obstacle, right? They'll be able to just kind of go up to their class and say, I'm interested in becoming a druid. What is it that I have to do? The obstacle would ostensibly be some kind of an admissions exam right there, or some kind of an aptitude. But if they I don't know, if we want something a little bit more long term, like a nemesis or some kind of a villain, or prepare them for some kind of a skill that they don't know they're going to need yet. I'm just trying to think of like what are our obstacles? I guess what I'm asking. What are the obstacles that we might foresee in an adventure or an encounter of this kind of nature?
I was just going to say, I think
Justin.
The obstacle, so it kind of depends on whether or not, like, the main bulk of the one shot will take place in the school, or getting into the school, or graduating from the school. I think that'll help determine the obstacle.
Right. So we can.
Yeah, I
can almost foresee this as like a sort of episodic adventure, right, where we do actually kind of like build, one encounter after the other, and the first encounter here would be, admissions, right, and so the first obstacle is getting in, right. So what would be the barriers to getting in? Roster size, right? Like, we only have one slot left, and right as you're applying, along comes somebody who's way better at this than you, and you kind of have to now, do something that's better than this other person who's competing for that spot. And maybe you both impress the professor, and now you've got yourself a class nemesis, right? But spot limitations are something that's kind of common to schools.
Yeah, I like that one, especially because it introduces a long form NPC. That'll be with you longer than just the kiosk, right? I like that. I also think the admissions is the other big one. And then if we wanted to throw a wrench in it, so instead of doing the hill giant, initially, right? It doesn't have to be a hill giant, but like, we could do it where like you're taking the admissions test, and then partway through something goes awry,
wolves, giant spiders, fire.
Yeah, professor going haywire, who knows what, right? Like, just something doesn't go as planned.
The other thing is tuition. We could always just say, like, hey, you need to go find a certain amount of money, and for rogues that means conning people, for bards that means performing, for barbarians feats of strength, various things.
Yeah, no, that's. I think that's cool, right? Pleading for
exactly
for tuition money if you're a bard.
Yeah, that could be a nice way to kind of add value to the whole proposition of entering the academy at all, right? Could be like, okay, you're in town, you walk up and you see the fair in front of you, and then they're like, okay, admissions fee or whatever, and then it's like, okay, none of you, because of how we set up the story, none of you have money.
Yeah.
How do you get money?
On that note,
how do you gain attention? Maybe there's these really long lines at each kiosk, and you're looking at the sun, and the hours are clicking down, and it's barely budging, right? So that kind of is a way to kind of work in what you were talking about earlier, Justin, in terms of like, maybe they're closing shop and you haven't had a chance to apply yet. How do you gain the attention of the people that are running the kiosk? Maybe this is a very popular thing, and it's crowded, and it only comes through town once a year, and this is your only chance for a whole another year to make something of your life, because of course I'm thinking like Oliver Twist. It's the poor orphan. So the exploration of the fair, I'm just thinking of like, we could do a sort of tabletop map or for something like that, and that would take care of the exploration part. The social part would be interacting with each of the kiosks that we set up, and the people at the kiosks, and I think we'll have to populate that with NPC stuff later.
Oh yeah.
And now for combat.
One quick thing I wanted to ask, like, what is the kind of predicted age of the students? Like, is this a school that takes you from like 12 to 20, or is it like you're a man, you're 16 to 18, and this is you leaving home, essentially going to college? Like, what do we envision? Because that'll also determine, like, you have this much money, but you need to get something else, or your parents don't want you to go, or like all sorts of different things.
Right. Well, I think when we say school, I'm immediately drawn to younger people. but it doesn't
Yeah,
have to
exactly.
be that way. It could simply just be the Academy for Adventurers, and maybe that's an opportunity for a younger person to play with an older person.
Sure.
Here's a 12-year-old
Yeah.
who's kind of projecting their character as a 16-year-old, and then here's a
Mm-hmm.
42-year-old projecting their character to be a 25-year-old.
So I meant like
and
the age of the characters. Sorry.
Yes, yeah, no, but I'm doing both.
Oh,
No,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of like metaing that. Yes, the
Sure.
age of the characters for sure, but I'm also imagining this being the actual players
Sure.
creating characters of different ages too. But the characters,
Yeah, I love that.
characters can range from 12 to, I don't know. I don't know too many older physical players are going to want to play younger characters, but
And that was
it could very well be
yeah.
teens.
Well, that was kind of my question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we could do younger though. Like I think when you arrive, you're going to see mostly younger people. However, there is no age restriction. It's just so like if there is an older player, then that could be part of the content. The lore is essentially like, hey, your older player feels a bit out of place. Everybody else who joins typically is young, bright-eyed, hoping to out in the world. But technically in the rules there isn't an age limit. You just didn't get your act together until later.
Imagining that one player who's like, I'm going to be an 80-year-old man going back to school. I finally
Exactly,
want to get my
right?
degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how it should feel, I think, is like, hey, if you have an older player, then that's just kind of a personal, conflict that they're going to have. It's like, oh, I'm old, everybody else is like young.
Yeah.
Well, that sucks.
I think that'll also determine what sort of tests we can have them do, because like you can't really have a 12-year-old like wrestle a bear, like that won't particularly make sense. Like a hill giant comes in.
You could, but
Yeah, like a hill giant comes in and like
could.
I don't know if like the 12-year-olds are gonna go take down the hill giant or giant spiders or things like that.
Why
I mean, it is
not?
D&D,
Just
but
kidding.
like my human brain is like, I mean, when I was 12, I mean, maybe even now, like I don't know if I.
Right, but this goes to the make it weird, right? Because you don't
okay.
picture 12-year-olds, and maybe their first impulse is to run away from the bear or the hill giant, but then they see a woman protecting her infant, and they grab the ocarina that was sitting on the bard's table because it's enchanted, and just kind of naturally they just take a swing at it, and they're able to lull the bear. It doesn't have to be combat as we know it, right? So that's the make it weird part. In fact, I find that most combat in RPGs suffers from this the rolling syndrome, where we just kind of start rolling and we forget to do some of the role playing. So I would like to provide in this opportunities for, and I'm going to do air quotes for you listeners out there, combat, in where you might have to defeat an enemy of some kind, but doesn't necessarily have to be by punching it or swinging a sword. In fact, I think it would probably be good to touch upon everything at each one of these kiosks that we're imagining, some kind of a magical artifact that a clever player might intuit or roll a perception or roll an insight check to recognize that it has some kind of ability that they might be good at should the need arise. And then later, when the barbarian teacher gets knocked out and they do want to lift the magical axe, or the sorcerer teacher gets knocked out and they do want to lift up that amulet that they were wearing to defeat said spider or said bear, there's context for that.
I like
because
it.
if it happens out of the blue, it just seems like it's a little railroad. But knowing that these things exist,
Exactly.
and they do the check, and maybe there's an NPC that we have wandering around, a jaded student, or maybe it's another college that was just kind of seeing what their fair was about, and they're like, they make comment about the magical artifact or whatnot, the magic item.
I like that. So, in this first encounter, kind of the timeline goes, the adventurers all arrive to the fair, or the prospective adventurers are all arrived to the fair at different points in time, and that'll probably have to be determined by the DM and their individual backstories, like, oh, you got done with your chores early, you're there. Or, oh, you just finished a late night bender, and you wake up on the streets, and you're already in the fair, like... kind of stuff like that.
Right.
And then they all see the kiosks and they decide, hey, I'm gonna go to this one or that one, and then something happens. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think that could work. And again, it depends on really the only decisions we would have to make is if we want the obstacle for this encounter to be gaining entrance to the school, or if we want the obstacle to be some sort of combat variation where they impress the school and then they get a bid to kind of enter the school.
So essentially, you're saying like either part of the test for admission includes is a serious enough obstacle that's the thing they're trying to overcome, or in the process of a more calm admission, something happens and then they
or perhaps the intrusion, the interruption is preconceived by the school. Right, I'm thinking like Tommy Lee Jones in Captain America when he throws the dummy grenade and Captain America jumps on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they kind of manifest this ogre to attack the village, and after maybe 3 or 4 rounds of combat, the barbarian teacher comes out and he like blows a whistle and he's like, "All right, Bob, you can go home." Everybody's like, "What just happened?" And you 5, displayed excellent heroism and bravery in the midst of turmoil and chaos. Therefore, you are our 5 heroes to be this week, this year.
I think that that actually would work better for it's late, the kiosks are they're closing up. To me, like a school would be like, hey, we didn't have time. In their minds, they're thinking we didn't have time to interview everyone, so let's just throw this random thing and see if there are any hopefuls out there that really impress us and kind of capture them at the last minute. I could see that easily happening.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea for the final, and that maybe it's not even the final. Maybe it's in the middle, because the final resolution part would be the conversation that you have after having defeated this obstacle in some way, shape, or form. It also like creates an interesting opportunity for the teachers to sort of spy on the other would-be applicants.
Mm-hmm.
Do they celebrate afterwards? Do they go, to the tavern and drink too much because they think they got in? I like that idea of let the players wander around a bit and get the sense of the lay of the land, the fairs, any NPCs that we want to generate, and then maybe at the height of the fair, when there's the most people and people are most vulnerable, this calamity ensues, which is preconceived, and that is the actual application process. Maybe we even have some like dummy application process, like at the barbarian table, they're arm wrestling, and we have the little arm wrestling game that I know is popular out there on the DM's Guild, or little games to kind of like keep them interested and entertained. Maybe earn some gold. That'd be a good way for them to earn some gold.
I like that, and I think instead of like an ogre, maybe it's like an elemental that the wizard accidentally summons or something. Like one of the grad students is like, yeah, let me show you this interesting, and then he accidentally like throws like a water elemental gem into the fountain, and then
Yeah, that could also work for the time of the year, right? We can if it's a summer festival, maybe there's a pond or a fountain of some kind, and they summon the water. If it's the fall, it's the wind, the winter, some kind of frost elemental or something like that. That works a lot. And again, it's replayable for the seasons. It's replayable because each time you revisit this encounter, you can check out a different school. I could see people playing this or throwing this into their game as a way of multi-classing, right? Like maybe you've been in a really long campaign and you're like, I'm stuck as the barbarian and I just really want to be the bard. And so like you wander into this town and, oh my gosh, here's this opportunity for me to learn the class that I want to, change into organically without having to kind of, I don't know, school feels pretty forced. But again, it does kind of make it organic, right?
Yeah, I like
So I like this direction. I like where we're headed right now.
Cool.
Very cool.
So I think we have like the general flow. So I'll kind of write down the timeline. I just prefer timeline just so I know, like, as a DM, you give them a range for doing stuff, and then at a certain point you decide something's going to happen, and then something like that.
Right. Well, an encounter is supposedly in the time of a game a very short amount of time, right? So this could be, anywhere from 10 minutes to 4 hours would be this particular encounter, right? In game time, right? Obviously, you play this as fast or as slow as you want at your gaming table.
Excellent. So the way I have it in the timeline, adventurers arrive at the fair, adventurers explore the fair, shops or the fair kiosks start closing up, and then the weird thing happens. So probably like some sort of intrusion of some sort of.
Yeah, I would just put intrusion.
Yeah. And then I spelled that wrong totally. And then at the end, the instructors converse with the adventurers, right?
Right. So the arrival, that's our exploration, right? And then kiosks up close would be the social part. So we've got all three pillars. We've got a reason, a beginning, a middle, and an end. We probably won't get to it in this particular episode, but we would then populate our NPCs and make some fun, weird characters.
Cool. So I think this would actually be a pretty good stopping point. So let's go ahead and off-screen or off-air, let's schedule the next segment. And I think it would actually be a good idea for us to give each other like assignments and say, you create these 3 grad students for these classes or something like that. So let's see. Assignments. Anyone have any specific like preferences for who you'd like to create or what you'd like to create?
Let's just really quickly take an informal poll here of how many classes / houses. Do we want to hit all of the classes, or do we want to just pick like 6? We each take 2 kind of thing.
What do you think, Tanner?
I think that could totally work.
Take 3 if you prefer.
Yeah, it would be shorter. And as far as like if we did choose like house style, I think a good way to go around it, because do any of you watch what is it, Dimension 20?
I don't watch them.
That's
like
no, but they're like they do a bunch of the
school,
live play tabletop, but they have that kind of school setting, and they kind of make fun of it because they're like, oh, here are the 4 different houses, and then they're like, oh, this system kind of sucks, because it's like essentially you're categorizing students on what you think they can achieve and stuff, and that's not great. I think one that probably makes more sense is categorizing students based on their personal goals, because it's like, oh, then they're choosing what they kind of want to achieve, instead of being thrown in. And if that's the case, we really could come up with 6, and like that's simple, I don't think there would be as harsh of a dividing line. Maybe the teacher would be, the same for or whatever. But anyway, sorry.
And again, this is our first draft of this. We could certainly make it like the House of Combat, and so that would cover, your barbarian and your, rogue. We could have the sort of House of Magic and cover all of your magic classes. We could have your House of the Healing, and that would cover your druid and cleric classes. So we could change it that way too if we wanted to make it weird, or we could abandon the idea of like house system because it has been done.
Yeah.
And we can simply have, this is to get into the school, and here are your professors. And their professors would be kind of like, the classes, and just, which professor do you want to study with? The professors are only taking 3 proteges, this year. Are you one of the 3? And there's like lines of people lining up to, apply to be one of the protege, and maybe it's interesting then because if you're with if there are 4 physical players at the table, they might not all want to be the barbarian. They might all want to be, we want to be a group of heroes, but we know we need to separate and leave each other, like friends often do when they go to school, to learn new skills.
Yeah, I kind of like that, making it less about houses and more like, hey, it's just one school, but the professors are kind of unique,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost more of a like discipleship, kind of like, where it's like mentorship. You're
Mm-hmm.
choosing a teacher based on what you kind of are interested in learning. So we'd spend more of our time just crafting an NPC that is unique from the other
Sure.
ones, or NPCs.
Got it. So then, in that case, we just each need to come up with,
Like 2
so like
each.
if they, because the school knows that they're going to have a long line of students or prospective students trying to apply. Would they choose to have only one admissions kiosk, or would they have a few set up here and there?
Yeah, they would
What do
have
you
a
guys think
few
about that?
lines, and at the end of each line, I think would be one of their distinguished faculty. And you know what I
Sure.
think might be an interesting twist here. So let's just say there are, again, I always picture parties of 4 in my head. Let's say there are 4 adventurers, real players coming to the table to play. They're only accepting 5, and so there will be a 5th sort of NPC that we kind of like lump with them, or because they are the ones that will make it, clearly, right? Like that's kind of the whole point. But I guess there has to be some potential for them not to. So I don't know, we'll iron that out.
I think it's worth it to make a Malfoy-esque character, or someone that's like, oh, we hate this guy, but he's really good.
Or
let's make sure,
being as this would be specifically for newer DMs, personally, I like the ability to have an NPC in the group to be like, hey, but what about this? And also like ask questions, like showing all the different points that they haven't thought about, just to, if nothing else, make them think a little bit more, like, wait, we can't do that because of this, but also the NPC said this thing, and they also said that, and for newer DMs, it might be a nice way for them to also give hints when the party is stuck for certain things. But I do like saying this is how many players this one shot is designed for. I think that is a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of stuff we all kind of like we tack that on sort of at the end when we've got an idea thinking here. But yeah, I like this idea. I think this has got some traction. I'm already starting to come up with some things in my head now. Which is fun. This is cool.
So then each of us assignment will be to create
2
one
NPCs.
or 2 NPCs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 NPCs.
And these are the mentors.
How about 2 NPCs, mentors. And then if you have extra time, come up with like an extra NPC that's just at the fair that day.
Absolutely.
Whether,
Yeah, like another, because I think if you have, I love that idea. Anyway,
cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Well, thank you, listener, for tuning in and kind of getting inside our heads as we are trying to figure out the adventure that is students getting into Robrick's Academy for the Bettering of Adventurers. Obviously, we haven't figured out a name for the actual one-shot, but I particularly do like the name of the Academy, and I'm really interested to see how this turns out. But Adventure, again, make sure you reach out to Rob. You can go to betterdungeonmaster.com/Robrick and get his encounter that he published on DM Guild.
That's
go ahead,
correct.
Rob.
And as a little sort of surprise for you folks, I'm not sure when this will air, but when it does, I've created a discount code for anyone listening. First 100 people who come online and log on will get the adventure for a whole $1.
Awesome.
That's
Oh,
right.
that's awesome.
For How to Be a Better DM podcast listeners.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so
That's awesome. Thank you, Rob.
guys.
betterdungeonmaster.com/Robrick. And thanks for being here, Rob. I have learned a lot, and I know that our listeners as well. So
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure having you.
Yeah. And listener,
Absolutely.
we'll be back next week. Sorry for the disjointed. I think my audio is lagging a little bit, but listener, thank you for coming, and we'll be back next week with an awesome episode, just like today. And until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative. Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the fighting forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to monsters.rent to find out more. That's the website. Monsters, with an S, .rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
We also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action,
You one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
drama,
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
and stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.